Welcome. I'm Dr. Richard Lewis Miller. I'm an 85-year-old clinical psychologist, and today I'm going to talk about the psycho-spiritual, physical benefit of exercise. Until I was about 40 years old, I didn't do much exercise other than perhaps turning pages on a book and moderate sexual activity. And then I read this article from Indiana University where they put people on various kinds of aerobic machines and measured them physically. And what they found was that when people maintained the aerobic area, which is somewhere between 60 and 80% of your maximum heart rate, for 30 minutes, they got a 2.5 hour response of uplifted spirits. If they did 60 minutes in a row of aerobic exercise, they got 7.5 hours of uplifted spirits. Now, when I read that article, I was the kind of guy that got up in the morning sort of grumpy and grouchy and stiff, and it took me a couple of hours to sort of get feeling myself and good, whatever myself means, and that was my pattern. And then I read this article about 7.5 hours of emotional uplift and feeling good from one consecutive hour of exercise. That looked pretty good to me. Well, but I didn't have it in me to go out and exercise for an hour. So I went out and tried jogging, and I was able to do it for about 5 to 10 minutes. So I kept doing it for 5 to 10 minutes. And then I read in another book that if you do it for 5 to 10 minutes, you can always increase by 10%. So I said, well, I think I'll just increase by 10 or 15% every week. So I went up from 10 minutes to 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 18 minutes, 21 minutes. And before I knew it, I was actually jogging for 60 minutes. Wow, what next? Well, then I increased my pace. And I went from being a jogger to a runner. And it changed my life because I did get the 7.5 hours of emotional uplift that the Indiana research indicated. And I loved it. I would get up in the morning and I'd start running at 8 o'clock and I'd be grumpy and I'd come home at 9 o'clock and I was in love with the world. I was the happiest guy. Very few weeks go by that I don't exercise aerobically for an hour, maybe 50, 60 minutes. I do that 5 to 7 days a week. And why? Mostly because I love the feeling that I get. I love walking around happy and grateful and feeling upbeat. It's a great feeling. Are you able to do the same thing? Yes. And how will you do it? I think you can do it the same way I did it. You can go out there for 5 minutes and then come home, for 7 minutes the next week and then come home. I think you're going to think I'm silly that most of you can walk right away for 15 or 20 minutes. Fine. If you can walk 15 or 20 minutes, walk 15 or 20 minutes, but do it every single day and then increase a little bit every single week. Don't try to increase faster. Let's not make this a big job that's a pain. Let's make it fun. And it's more fun if you can find people to do it with. It took me a long time to find people to do it with, so I was out there alone a lot of the time. But eventually I found people. I found my buddy Wayne Green, and we would exercise together. And we were both 60-minute runners. And one of the things that I developed as a runner that's also helped me that I offer to you is the golden lasso. What's the golden lasso? When you're going up a hill like this and one person's up ahead and one's behind, the one up ahead turns around, throws the golden lasso down to the person below, wraps it around their stomach, and pulls them up the hill. Well, once I learned about the golden lasso and how well it worked during exercise, I've used the golden lasso for all kinds of things. How about when your friend or your family member or your husband or your wife or your sister or your brother are in a low mood, how about throwing them the golden lasso and doing what you can to pull that mood up? Life's too short to be walking around in a down mood. But when you have a friend or a buddy to throw you the golden lasso, up you can go. So you're going to do it, right? You're going to do your 5, 10, 15, or 20 minutes for a week and then start adding to it. You need to know a time when you're going to do this. You can't get up in the morning and say, well, sometime today I'm going to do my jogging or my exercise. Some of you aren't going to jog. You're going to do an elliptical machine or a bicycle. I don't recommend a bicycle, and I'll tell you why another time. But the elliptical machine is fine, and I suppose the Stairmaster is too. You can find your own machine. The key is to get your heart rate up to between 60 and 80% of your maximum heart rate. And your maximum heart rate is pretty much 220 minus your age. Then you can figure out the 60 and 80% in order to get into your aerobic area. You're going to set a time, and that's going to be your daily time. Trust me, if you set a time that's the same time every day, that will become your time after a while. It'll just become part of your life. That's what you do every day at that particular time. That's what happened to me. 8 o'clock in the morning became my time. That's what I did. Come rain or shine. Rain. Oh boy, in the beginning when I was running, any kind of rain on the window, that was an excuse not to go out there. But eventually I figured out it's just water. I'm made up of 83% water. What am I afraid of going out in the rain? So I got some rain slickers, a nice little rain jacket, rain pants, and a little rain hat, and out I went against the elements. It was wonderful. I loved it. There's a lot to be said for learning to be a walker, a jogger, or a runner. It really can change your life. One of the things that happened to me was when I would go someplace, let's say I went to a city for a conference, I would go out for an early morning run at 8 o'clock, and I'd run around the city. Well, in an hour, I could cover 7 or 8 miles. That's a lot of learning about neighborhoods, learning about the smells and the views. It's a very different way of learning about an area than driving through it, either on a car or a motorcycle. There's so much to be said for jogging, walking, or running through an area. Make a time that is your time. When you start with your 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, you start at that same time. And then that time increases, you still start at that same time. That is your time to exercise and make it sacrosanct so it becomes part of you. That's the way to develop a lifelong exercise program. And by the way, you don't have to stay with one thing. I've learned that by switching and learning different forms of exercise, it makes it much more interesting. So, for example, I taught myself how to do swimming, and I became a lap swimmer and eventually became an open water endurance swimmer because the exercise event transfers. So since I was used to jogging and then running for an hour, when I taught myself to swim, I immediately started swimming for an hour because my body knew how to exercise for an hour. And when I tried on the elliptical machine, I immediately was able to do an hour on the elliptical machine again because the body knows and the body is ready for an hour of exercise. So nowadays, I do the elliptical machine, I do tricycling, 3 wheels, and then I do lap swimming. Sadly, I can't run anymore because I had a horrific motorcycle accident. I'm going to cut to the chase. It's a big, long story, which I don't think I want to tell right now. But the part I want to jump to is, with my 2 legs casted, as soon as I was able to get out of the bed after a couple of weeks, intensive care and so on, as soon as I was able to get out of the bed and into a wheelchair, I started doing wheelies around the hospital. Why? Because I wanted that good old feeling again, that emotional uplift that you get from doing a half hour or then an hour of exercise. Now, I couldn't do an hour in the wheelchair right away, But I was able to come close to a half hour, and that lifted my spirits. And I needed lifted spirits because the doctors were telling me that I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And I was saying, I'll do 2 triathlons within 2 years. So I kept exercising around the hospital. And as soon as I was able to get out of the wheelchair, which was 6 months later, I immediately went to the gym and started doing anything that I could, which was very little. But a little bit over a long period of time is a lot of something. And so over time, my strength built up in my arms and my legs and my body and my core. And yes, I completed 2 triathlons within 2 years of that horrific accident. Now, there's so much to be said for exercise to encourage you to do it. For example, exercise is the number one treatment we have for depression. It's been tested. Duke University did the tests, and they compared exercise to the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, what's called SSRIs. And exercise left the medicine in the dust. The issue is it's very hard to motivate people who are depressed to exercise. That's the key. And what are you going to do? Suppose you're listening to this and you are depressed and you say, I believe this man that the exercise will help me. It might even cure me. But how the heck am I going to get out of bed or out of this chair and exercise? Well, you need help. Who can you call? Who can you get for an exercise buddy? Where can you go to get help? Can you go to a gym and talk to people there about getting some camaraderie, some people to exercise with? That will help you. Yes, it will. What else? Look at some YouTubes on exercise. See if you can motivate yourself using the YouTubes. Get creative with what you can do. And the most creative thing that I can think of, and it's not even that creative, it's just a discipline, is if you're depressed and you can't get yourself to exercise, see if you can get yourself to walk around your house or your apartment for 5 minutes. Just 5 little minutes. And do that every single day. And then the following week, walk around for 7 minutes. And the following week, 9 minutes. You get my drift. You'll be there with the hour if you just do it 2 minutes at a time. And I would say a very high percentage of people who are depressed, and I've treated plenty of depressed people in my 64 years of practice, can get themselves to walk for 5 to 10 minutes. The key is to keep increasing it every week and to keep doing it every single day. Every single day, increase every single week. That will get you there. Now, there are certain paradoxes when it comes to exercise. So, for example, my wife, who's dealing with breast cancer, suffers from fatigue from the chemo. She needs to exercise. Yes, even though she is tired and fatigued, the exercise will help her. She doesn't need to relax, to rest more. That's old-fashioned. The new thinking is energy begets energy. Exercise creates more energy. I do everything I can to encourage her to exercise. She's doing a fantastic job. She is exercising with her chemo. Yes. And with radiation coming up, yes, she is exercising. She's walking 3 times a week for 4 miles with a group of friends, and she's lifting weights 4 times a week for a half hour. That's a good exercise program for anybody. And I'm here to tell you that if a woman who's taking chemo for cancer and dealing with cancer can do that kind of exercise program, I think a very high percentage of you can do the same thing. So some of you are going to say, I don't have time for all of this because I work so much. I had a patient who got a very serious illness, and he had to take major chemo for hepatitis. And he was very concerned that he would lose his job if the bosses found out. And he didn't have time to exercise because his job was so all-encompassing. So what we did was we created an exercise program that he could do on his breaks. And every hour, he took a 5 or a 10-minute break. And during that 5 or 10-minute break, he did sit-ups, he did push-ups, he did various kinds of energy movement with his body. He sometimes jumped in place. He did an exercise program for 5, 7, or 10 minutes. However, the key is he did the exercise program on a break every hour. So by the end of the day, he had gotten in 60 or 70 minutes. He got to the point where he could do hundreds of push-ups in one day. That adds up to thousands per week. During the entire year that this program went on, he never lost hair on his head. He never missed a day's work. He didn't lose his job. And he was very confident at the end of the year that he could handle just about anything. I've seen him recently. It's 30 years later. He has not had a recurrence, and he's still exercising. And that tells you that anyone can exercise because we all get short breaks, and it's a good thing to take a break every hour. It's a very good thing. In fact, my iWatch, it tells me to take a break if I forget, and I didn't ask it to do that. It came with that. Now, some of you are going to make what's called a New Year's resolution, and you're going to tell yourself, well, I'm going to start exercising, and then you come up with some time in the future, like people in December who say they'll start exercising in January. Those resolutions, they're very faulty, and they very often don't work. Suppose you discovered that something that you were eating had poison in it. When would you stop? Would you say, I think I'll stop next week? Or maybe next month? Or if you discovered the poison in early December, would you make a New Year's resolution that you'll stop in January? I don't think so. Most of us, when we discover that there's something toxic in our food, we stop eating that food immediately. The converse is true. When you're ready to start exercising immediately, like there's no tomorrow. What works is saying on a Monday, I'm going to start exercising Tuesday morning, unless you still have time on Monday, and then you say, I'm going to start exercising right now. And remember, what we mean by exercising might mean just a 5, 10, or 15, or 20-minute walk, nothing more. 5 minutes is acceptable, folks. 5 minutes is acceptable because next week it'll be 7, and the next week 9, and the next week 11, and before you know it, you'll be at 60 minutes. A little something over a long period of time becomes a lot of something. Forget the New Year's resolutions. Make your exercise program immediate. Embrace it. If you're listening to this and you're ready to start right away. And as a matter of fact, shut your computer if you can and take a 5-minute or 8-minute or 11-minute walk right now. Everything counts. There's no such a thing as, oh, I just did 5 minutes, it didn't count. It does count. How do I know it counts? Because there was a time in my life when I could only walk 1 step, and I'm not exaggerating. I could walk 1 step, but within 2 years I completed 2 triathlons, because after that 1 step, I could walk a 2nd step, and then a 3rd, and then a 4th, and you see where I'm headed. Eventually I was walking and running again. A little something over a long period of time is a lot of something. There's a lot of value in keeping an exercise journal. 1 page, a little one, if it's a little book, for every day. Oh, nowadays you're not going to do a little book. You're going to do it on your cell phone or your computer. Keep a journal. You'll enjoy it. You write down 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. Then sometimes you write down what your mood was. Good mood, bad mood, grumpy mood, happy mood. And then keep it up. And then every week or two, read back the notes. Check in on yourself. Having that journal is it's rewarding. And I've gotten a lot of value out of it, so I'm passing it on to you. Exercise has played an essential role in my life that I'm attempting here to pass on the discipline to you. It has helped me emotionally, it's helped me physically because it burns calories, and I've always had to deal with the possibility of sudden weight gain in my life. And I think most of all, it's helped me with self-confidence because as the months and years go by that I exercise, I get feeling better and better about myself that I've been able to accomplish this task. Remember, I didn't do almost any exercise until I was past 40. And so this is new in the second half of my life, and it's been a tremendous confidence builder. Now, I know that all of you aren't going to go out there and run marathons the way I eventually did, but I can tell you that just finishing a 10K, 10 kilometers, 6.2 miles, is a wonderful feeling. And you don't have to run, and you don't even have to jog. You can walk a 10K, and that counts also. It's a feeling of accomplishment. There's an emotional factor tied to the confidence factor, of course, and then there's the weight control factor. Those are pretty important in my life, and I would imagine they're important in your life. Until next time, this is Dr. Richard Lewis Miller reminding you that good health is worth fighting for.